I am Christian von Carmian, long-time Genestealer Cult player, as you may be able to tell from my models. That is older than most of you. So we're going to be looking at army lists for beginners, because you may not have been alive when the Genestealer Cult came out, and so with the Genestealer Cult being around longer than you have, you're going to be new to the Genestealer Cult. These army lists I'm going to be explaining today are suitable for beginners, but it doesn't have to be for beginners of Warhammer 40,000. The Genestealer Cult have a steep learning curve. An expert may use a Genestealer Cult list better or change a few things out. All of these lists can be adapted to better suit your playstyle and your collection. I'm not throwing out 6 army lists, that could be a text file. This video will explain how the lists work, why each unit is in the army list, and what clever combinations of character, enhancement, unit, and stratagem can achieve. The reason I have 6 lists to show off is because there are 6 Genestealer Cult detachments in 10th edition of 40k at time of recording. We have the ambush specialists of the Host of Ascension, the horde of the Xenocreed Congregation, the monsters of the Biosanctic Broodsurge, the speed of the Outlander Claw, the heavy tanks of the Brood Brothers Auxilia, and the terrifying Tyranids in the Final Day detachment. The Index Ascension Day is no longer used and has been superseded by the Host of Ascension and the Brood Brothers Auxilia, depending on if you wanted the detachment rule or the Astra Militarum allies. A more tactics-focused Genestealer Cult 1000 points video has been done before with the Index, and the tactics hold up. So this video focuses on the detachments and why we change our list for each detachment because of the different units and their strength relative to the detachment rules and stratagems. The points change so often, so if an army list I show off seems perfect for you, please check what the current points cost of each unit is. You may have to drop a unit, change one unit for another, or happiest of days, Ascension days, you have more points to work with and can take another enhancement or a bigger unit. 1000 points is fun, and it's an encouraged point size that Games Workshop uses a lot, suggesting that they have tried to balance the game of this size. I smile a little, but there is a feeling of balance. It is not worse than 2000 points. 1000 points is recommended as a size in the core rules, and Games Workshop has released supplements that support 1000 points, like the mission deck for 2025-2026 for competitive play, that has 1000 point missions with the objectives a bit closer to the center, and Crusade campaigns, using any of the Crusade expansions, start with a 1000 point list. 1000 points has a good number of units. It's not overwhelming for new players, or not as overwhelming as larger games. You get to try out a faction in a full game and figure out where or if you want to expand this army. For more experienced players, 1000 points offers a lot of tactical thought, as you have the time to use each unit optimally. In 2000 point games, you may skip over some shooting to save time, or put models in a pile rather than setting them up properly to keep the game moving. It's a lot of playing by intent. Something that used to be abhorred, now is the way you have to play to complete 2000 points within 3 hours, or less if you're playing a competitive tournament game. You have more time per model in a 1000 point game. And in a casual or tournament setting, you are more likely to finish a 1000 point game. I have a Boo Hiss 2000 points video if you want to get more into it. We have advantages as the Genestealer Cult in 1000 point games. I'm covering them here and you need to remember them regardless of detachment. In 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000, 1000 points is played on the same large board as a 2000 point game, so we should have more space to deep strike. That is an ability most of our units have, so let's take advantage of a less cluttered board with fewer screening units. If you are playing against Genestealer Cult and think, well that looks really scary, that is a whole different video on how to defeat the Genestealer Cult. Aside from in Crusade games, there are 5 objectives in a 1000 point game, the same as a 2000 point game. The Genestealer Cult are easily a horde army, our opponents may not be. Their army may be 5 units, so if you kill 3 units, they cannot hold more than 2 objectives. And if you think, well what about objectives secured as a rule, or anything else that can stick you an objective? Our deep striking and many fast and small units can easily take out the nothing that is holding that objective. 5 acolytes or 5 jackal bikers or a single character with deep strike can do that, as can any of the deep striking units arriving from Cult Ambush. This also means that a key tactic we have is get rid of the smallest and weakest of the enemy units to give us numerical advantage. And we have the numerical advantage because of resurgence points. 6 resurgence points at 1000 point games. We can bring back small units like Acolytes, like Jackal Bikers, like Pure Strain Genestealers that can advance and charge and return quickly to the fight from Cult Ambush tokens. The number of resurgence points we have per game size and the cost per unit may change. Games Workshop loves to tinker with Cult Ambush. But these are the tactics you can use with any army list. If enemies of the Tyranids know to shoot the big ones, Genestealer Cult players should know to destroy the small enemy units, the enemy units that would otherwise hold objectives and complete actions. If all they have is powerful killy units, they either have to forego their killing or try and wipe us out, and good luck to them on that front. We don't just have resurgence points, we regenerate with cult icons. That is a bigger percentage of your army returning through those icons than in a 2000 point game. So take cult icons. If you think of a small 5-man Acolyte squad that normally has hand flamers only, take an icon. Small point games means fewer enemy attacks flying around to wipe out all your models in one go. Good. Now we will look at the first army list. As this video is designed to help beginners get into Genestealer Cult and get to 1000 points, the first army list is based on the Combat Patrol box that came out with the Codex in 2024, the Claw of Ascension Combat Patrol. We will have 2 of them. Each Combat Patrol includes Jackal Alphas, 5 Atalan Jackals, an Achilles Ridgerunner, and 10 Metamorphs. These can also be built as either kind of Acolyte, Acolytes with hand flamers and demo charges, or Acolytes with auto pistols and mining tools. 3 different datasheet options. This assortment of units most suits the Outlander Claw detachment, which gives bonuses to the Ridgerunner, the Jackals, and transports. So the first thing I'm going to add to this grouping of units is a pair of Goliath trucks. And if you wanted to buy the Combat Patrol boxes or Goliath trucks, there are affiliate links in the description that will give you the units cheaper than buying them through Games Workshop, and this supports my channel in the process. So whatever boxes you're putting on your list to buy, see if one of my affiliates has it cheaper for you. So here is the army list, and then I will go over some tactics and combos, why the units are here, and I've arranged this army list so you can see it by Combat Patrol box. We have a Jackal Alphas with Serpentine tactics, 5 Atalan Jackals, an Achilles Ridgerunner, 10 Metamorphs, a Goliath truck. From the second Combat Patrol box, another 5 Atalan Jackals, another Achilles Ridgerunner, 5 Acolytes with hand flamers, 5 Acolytes with auto pistols, a Reductor Saboteur with cartographic data leech, 10 Neophytes, and a Goliath truck. So there are some more models to buy beyond the trucks and the Combat Patrols. Though the Reductors can be converted with a demo charge arm from the Neophytes, one of their heads, and any human-sized body, of which you get additional spare models with the Goliath truck. Or you could take something like the Model of the Month, where you go into a Games Workshop store and get a free man. From 2 Combat Patrols, you also have another Jackal Alphas as an alternate leader to the Reductors. And the last unit to buy is 10 Neophytes. They can be cheaper once the Combat Patrol magazine is out. Hopefully it comes out in your country. The UK will get it first in November 2025. I don't know when you're watching this, but it's something to consider. The Metamorphs go in one of the trucks, and then the truck can scout because the Metamorphs have scout and trucks a dedicated transport. You can't do this if another unit is in the truck. All of the units inside need to have the scout ability in order to scout. So you could have added a Locust to the unit for fight first, an Icon Ward for 4+ Feel No Pain and still being able to scout because the Icon Ward has scout, or you could add a Biophagus for some disgusting combat bonuses. I didn't, because you have to consider force multipliers compared to having more units. Be careful what you spend your points on. The unit has a cult icon and 9 hand flamers. When disembarking from the truck, if the truck shoots the same thing as the Metamorphs get to fully reroll wounds when they're shooting, and those hand flamers auto hit, and then their combat attacks can deal with most units you see at 1000 points rather well. If they can't damage a unit, adding a character will not help them. For the points of some of these characters, it is almost the points of a Neophyte or Acolyte unit, and I prefer the extra unit. The Achilles Ridgerunner is a unit you're going to see a lot in this video. They are great support for doing damage in any of the detachments. Each one can pick an upgrade. I like the free smokescreen ability, I like the Auspex array, and I like the spotter. All of them are good, but I would equip the Ridge Runners with the heavy mining laser, because then you can bring down big enemies and delete squads, something that many of our other units cannot do. The 2 Ridge Runners could be in the same unit, but if you run them separately, you can hit 2 different enemy units with the Crossfire ability. This is an ability that will last until the end of the turn, so it works for shooting and combat, and it gives your units +1 armor penetration when attacking an enemy unit affected by Crossfire. If you thought the Metamorphs weren't doing enough damage with their hand flamers that already ignore cover and are fully rerolling wound rolls, give them an extra armor penetration. Then if they're charging an enemy, Metamorph Claws now hit with the same armor penetration as Pure Strain Genestealer Claws, but Metamorphs can have 5 attacks, more than the Pure Strain Genestealers, or we can have damage too. The Reductor Saboteur has cartographic data leech. While they are inside a transport, any weapons used with the firing deck rule has +1 ballistic skill. You could have a Benefactus instead of the Reductus if you prefer, then you have a las cannon brain hitting on a 2+, and if the hazardous test is failed, the truck takes the mortal wounds as the truck is firing the mind laser for rules purposes. That's how the firing deck ability works. As trucks have firing deck 6, you could fire the indirect bombs from the Reductor Saboteur, along with the 4 best neophyte weapons, such as a seismic cannon, a mining laser, grenade launcher, and Weber. You can't fire one-shot weapons from the truck, like the Reductor Saboteur's demolition charge, but the truck has its own cache. The neophytes will be in the truck, but they can start the game on the home objective to use a plan generations in the making to sticky it under our control. As a dedicated transport, the truck has to have a unit start inside, so the Reductus starts inside. The neophytes could stay in the truck the whole game, but if you can sticky an objective and there are no jackals nearby, get the neophytes out and keep them safe for a turn. Forgo the shooting with rerolls to wound if it means staying out of line of sight. The truck could also charge nearby enemies if it will stop them shooting and charging the neophytes. Or the Reductus could blow up such enemies after disembarking, or she can complete secondary missions without being shot as she is a lone operative. Depending on the situation you're in, will depend on which units you get out of the truck, both of them, neither of them, whatever the situation requires. The 5 acolytes with auto pistols and mining tools, made from the parts within the Combat Patrol box, they have a leader with the leader weapons, 3 mining tools, and 1 cult icon. Their special ability lets them mine for command points, so we can start them on the home objective, leave them on the home objective, and even if they die because the neophytes made it sticky, we will keep that objective unless the enemy is right there with us. So they can mine the home objective to generate command points from the start of the command phase. If you go second, we can do this from our first turn, but because you only control objectives from the end of the first phase, if we go first, we don't control the objective at the start of our command phase. But if you go second, at least one phase has passed in the opponent's turn, and so we can use this ability. The Neophyte's ability of plan generations in the making to sticky the objective is at the end of the phase, and you get to choose the order when things are simultaneous, so you control the objective, and then it becomes sticky. The 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers are in Deep Strike. They are the only unit in Deep Strike, though you could choose to have the Ridge Runners in reserve as well. The role of the Acolytes is to counterattack with Hand Flamers. There are 4 Hand Flamers and a cult icon. No demo charges, because we're not going to be in range to throw them when we arrive by Deep Strike, and we're not going to be popping out of a truck, the reason being, the unit already has full rerolls to wound against enemies on objectives, so we don't need that ability from the Goliath truck. They drop down and deal with light infantry, clear them away from objectives, or they can take objectives that are not being held by the enemy. The Jackal Alphas with 1 unit of Jackal Bikers is speed itself. The unit can move, shoot, and then with the Alphas, move again. Because we have Serpentine Tactics as an enhancement, you can fall back and then shoot, and because you shot with the Jackal Alphas, you can move again. You can cover a lot of distance and get around the board. These are going to be very empty looking boards in the later game. Oh, and after you've made any one of these moves, Demolition Run. That's gonna hurt the enemy. Units of 5 or 6 models are good because you can't get more than 6 mortal wounds with this ability. Mortal wounds are one of the main ways you can bring down problematic enemy units, enemies with high invulnerable saves or high armor saves. You have grenades as a stratagem if you want more mortal wounds from this unit. They do alright with shooting, they do alright with close combat. You will want a mining laser on the wolf quad, 2 of the bikers will have power weapons, and 1 of them will have a grenade launcher. With our 2 units of jackal bikers, at the start of the game, 1 or both units can scout. Don't worry about the home objective, we have the neophytes there to make it sticky, we have the acolytes there to control it and start mining. The bikers are going to deal with enemy units who infiltrate. If we go first, scout close and be ready to move in and blow them up with demo run and then shoot them and charge them if necessary. If you go second, a line of bikes can stop the enemy from move blocking you to keep you in your own deployment zone. You will have about 9 inches more space in the first turn. You could scout to close by objectives before the first turn and then use rapid takeover, which is the detachment rule, to make it yours until the enemy takes it. So it's possible to have 3 objectives completely stickied at the end of your first turn, and then you can concentrate on attacking the enemy with your units. You don't need to have people sitting around on objectives. You can start the bikes in the open. If you get the first turn, get to those objectives. If you don't get the first turn, your scout move could be backwards to safety and out of line of sight. The jackal bikers can be so very good in this detachment. While the 6 resurgence points you have could be spent on returning the 10 metamorphs and 1 unit of 5 acolytes, returning 2 units of 5 bikers is the best option for our 6 points. It depends on how the battle goes. Last time I used this list at 1000 points, I brought back the metamorphs and 5 acolytes, but if I had lost a unit of bikes early, that is the unit I would bring back. Later in the game I could then return the other unit of bikes. Though without the Alphas, because the Alphas doesn't have Cult Ambush, you don't return any characters into Cult Ambush. You could return the same dead biker unit again. It depends what I need at the time. If I need a deep striking unit, Neophytes. If I need something faster, the Jackal Bikers. This army has a lot of sticky objectives, a lot of objective control with the bikes, the trucks, the neophytes, the acolytes. All of them have high objective control or an objective control that's made high because of the detachment rule. Only the metamorphs don't have high objective control, and they are our key damage dealing unit. We do have a lot of vehicles, except that if you are playing with a mission deck and your opponent draws Bring It Down, you will give up a lot of victory points. But deft maneuvering and devoted crew can help to keep our vehicles alive for a turn. With our speed, you can put a lot of pressure on enemies very quickly. If the enemy has no infiltrators, you can scout with the Metamorph truck, the Ridge Runners, and the Jackal Bikers. You can sticky so many objectives and then keep the fighting on the edge of the enemy deployment zone. You will score primary mission, and the enemy will not. Then you win. If the enemy deep strikes onto your empty objectives at the Jackals with rapid takeover, or the Neophytes with planned generations in the making put under your control, the Acolytes with hand flamers can counterattack. Or your rapidly moving bikes can pull back very quickly and deal with the enemy, and then put the objective back under your control. This is a nice list. This is how you use the list. But Outlander Claw is my least favourite detachment because I prefer more murderous attacks, and this detachment's tactics like gotta go fast, objective control, and stay alive, which doesn't suit my playstyle. Also, I'm not Australian, and while I liked the Mad Max films, I don't want that to be my personality. Playstyle is important when picking a Genestealer Cult army. What is best for your friend, or a tournament winner, or me, may not suit how your mind likes to operate in the game. If what I described sounds cool, there is one great starting list and tactics. Detachments will change across the editions, as will sub-faction rules if they come back, but a style of play can continue to be valid. If you want to see more of the mechanized tactics, I've done a video on that kind of list before. The style that works best for me is a focus on deep strike. Genestealer Cult units arriving when we want to arrive, we strike where we want to strike. We control the game, we decide what dies and what gets to live. I will be the god of this new world! It's the Host of Ascension, with bonuses when coming from reserves. A perfect ambush is a detachment rule. Each time a Genestealer Cults unit from your army is set up on the battlefield as reinforcements, until the end of your next fight phase, your weapons have sustained hits and ignores cover. Detachment rules act as a great guide for showing what units to focus on and what you should be doing with the detachment. The Outlander Claw detachment rule is showing off jackals and vehicles and objective control as a tactic. The Host of Ascension wants deep strike coming from reserves, and then you get lots of shots. We are rising up from underground. You know how it is. You meet a nice person who says, "Hey, you're cute. I'm gonna make you mine." And 6 months later, you were 20 foot through a limestone block because they made you mine. Well, no more. We rise up, and any unit arriving from reserves gets the detachment bonus. Deep strike, strategic reserves, and cult ambush. That will give you sustained hits, which lasts until the end of your next fight phase. So if you arrive through a cult ambush marker or rapid ingress, you will have sustained hits and ignore cover in the enemy charge phase if you choose to fire Overwatch, in the enemy fight phase in close combat, your next shooting phase, and your next fight phase. This is a good detachment for beginners because it really gets you into the main way to play Genestealer Cult. Most of our units have deep strike, and playing this detachment will reward you for deep striking. Learn that 9-inch charges are not reliable, and rapid ingress is a good way around it. But rapid ingress out of line of sight so you don't get shot. You can arrive on enemy objectives, arrive in the enemy deployment zone to complete secondary missions, arrive all on one flank where only a few enemies can react to you. Playing Host of Ascension teaches you these tactics better than I can. Or maybe about as well as I can. Your gameplay will be better after listening to me. And this detachment, though suitable for beginners, can be a very competitive detachment that has achieved high rankings in tournament events. So here is a 1000 point list. There is a Primus with a chink in their armor enhancement. They join 20 neophytes. We have a Biophagus with the enhancement Our Time is Nigh. They join 10 auto pistol and mining tool acolytes. We have a Locust leading 10 metamorphs, 5 pure strain Genestealers, an Achilles Ridge Runner, 5 Handflamer acolytes, 10 more neophytes, and a Sanctus. In the match play mission decks and crusade missions, you cannot have more than 50% of your army in reserves, but we want our units to be in reserves to get the detachment bonus. We can break the rule with the Primus, who can move 3 units into reserves after deployment, so it is possible to have your entire 1000 point army in reserves at the start of the game. There is no "if you have nothing on the table you lose" rule in 10th edition. We aren't going to put all our units in reserves, some have important jobs to complete on the first turn, as I will explain shortly. Because I want to get straight to the big murder combo, it is always exciting to put it on the table. 20 neophytes have a lot of shots. 4 of them can have a special weapon from this list, 4 of them can have a heavy weapon from this list. Because it's a unit of 20, you can't have the same weapon more than twice. But they have a lot of guns to do a lot of shots, and we get more shots because we're coming from reserves and get sustained hits. They are hitting on a 4+, but the Primus gives them full rerolls to hit. And because of a chink in our armor, we have lethal hits on top of the sustained hits. And then, primed and readied as a stratagem mean that critical hits trigger on a 5+. That is lethal hits and sustained hits. And you can reroll any that are not 5s or 6s. And if you can, the Ridge Runner has the crossfire ability. If it shoots an enemy unit first and gets at least 1 hit, that enemy can be hit by crossfire, and so your neophytes and any other unit targeting that enemy unit can have an extra point of armor penetration. With all of that, can you wreck a Land Raider? Using the Adept Roll app, you can figure out if you can. Can you wreck the one big Imperial Knight you see on tables at 1000 points? The app has the ability to say, I've got sustained hits, and I've got lethal hits. And you can say you want to fish for more criticals with your full rerolls, and you can set it to fish to get a 5+. From all of the numbers you put into the app, you have about a 60% chance of killing a 22 wound knight, and it will tell you how many wounds you cause on average. This is a good app for figuring out if you can wreck the battle wagon you know your friend always brings to the game, and what bonuses you need to make it happen. The download link for the app is in the description and as a pinned comment. The Primus and their neophytes can focus down one target. I know a lot of people like to say, hey, what's the biggest thing in your army? Okay, let's see if I can kill it. But I prefer to split fire and mess up many enemy units instead of overkilling one, because weakened enemies can then be picked off by your other units, and they're not in a position to wipe out 10 neophytes, and certainly not 20 neophytes. What you need to keep in mind is target priority. shoot the enemy's little units that score victory points for your opponent. Get them deaded. Or kill a bigger threat that can shoot through your hordes. A Redemptor Dreadnought may look scary, but how many neophytes can it kill compared to the 10 intercessors with Lieutenant who can put out 40 shots with lethal hits? I learnt this from playing Chaos Space Marines for years before Genestealer Cult came back in 7th edition. The Chaos Cultists are the most important part of the army for winning the game. If they die, the Elite Chosen and Possessed can't pull double duty of killing enemies and controlling objectives. If your 20 Neophytes and Primus pop up and kill all the enemy models that have an objective control higher than 1, and any enemy units with sticky objectives, you are much closer to victory than if you took down the Imperial Knight. Because I'm not focusing on taking down one vehicle, I have seismic cannons and heavy stubbers. The heavy stubbers are very good in this detachment because they have 6 shots when you're in rapid fire range, which is 18 inches, and with those lethal hits and sustained hits, I prefer many shots over one mining laser shot. For this unit only, the other unit of 10 has a mining laser and a seismic cannon. The other weapon choices on the squad of 20 neophytes, I have 2 grenade launchers and 2 flamers. I prefer flamers over webbers in that unit, as we can target light infantry that is often toughness 3 or toughness 4. If I was going for the big super mega death thing, then I would want the webbers instead. I know I warned against big murder balls, but although the murder ball of neophytes and the Primus is a lot of points, that is okay because it does so many things. It's a lot of bodies to cut through, which delays the enemy. You can kill the enemy with combos, and you can hold objectives really securely because each neophyte is objective control too. And because of the size of the unit, you may be able to spread them out over multiple objectives. It is hard for enemies to wipe us out in one go, and if they don't wipe us out with one unit shots, you can return to the shadows to strike again. In the following turn we can pop out again, and then we have sustained hits and lethal hits and ignore cover once more, and we can wreck another unit, or units, because the chink in their armor works each time the bearer is set up on the battlefield as reinforcements, and return to the shadows puts you into strategic reserves, a kind of reinforcements, one that you can deep strike out of. And while we are in reserves, our unit can regenerate with the cult icon, so casualties can be recouped before we come out again. The enemy plays Whack a Cultist unless they charge us. Then we can't return to the shadows, but we can cause some nasty mortal wounds on tanks and terminators with Deadly Snare. Don't roll a 1. I would have this unit focus on a flank, slower enemy armies that can't return to reserves are now out of luck, and half the board is easy for you to control, especially with the sticky objectives that those neophytes have. So we know that being charged is a weakness. What you can do is deep strike the Locust and Metamorphs nearby. They have fight first with the Locust. Their hand flamers can cause a lot of damage to light enemies, and because of fight first, if we heroically intervene to save the neophytes, the Metamorphs will fight first, and it doesn't matter if the enemy is Marines or Guardsmen, we have a profile in combat to deal with them. While I'm mentioning a lot of stratagems, there is a character that makes the stratagems cheaper for us, the Nexus. I don't find them too useful, because we will have secondary missions that we can't complete, and discarding those, especially in the first turn, gives us the command points that we are likely to need for the big strike on turn 2. Some of those command points I spend on the Biophagus. Having a Biophagus leader unit gives that unit lethal hits in close combat every turn, not just the turn you arrive from reserves. And Primed and Readied is a stratagem that can be used in the shooting phase or the fight phase. It isn't just the turn you come from reserves. So you can have lethal hits triggering on a 5+ whenever you attack in close combat with this unit. I like the Mining Tool Acolytes because the Mining Tool Acolytes can hurt tanks with their anti-vehicle 4+ weaponry, or they can hurt enemy infantry with our many attacks and the lethal hits, and the Biophagus Familiar can be used to get a once per game +1 to wound against infantry. Very valuable against higher toughness infantry like Gravis Marines or Chaos Possessed. The Biophagus has Our Time is Nigh. That means that you can charge once per game with a +2 inches. You don't have to charge from Deep Strike. It would be a 7-inch charge, but you can still fail a 7-inch charge. Rapid Ingress is an option. I like to Rapid Ingress with this unit to get them on the board, and then in the coming turn, I will move and charge, and that's going to be a much shorter charge. Our time is now as once per game, so do it whenever you need to make a charge succeed. Those are our main damage dealing units in a damage dealing detachment. The other units are still doing all very important things that score us victory points. 10 neophytes with sticky objectives can control the home objective from the start of the game. Just because you have more units than your opponent doesn't mean that you can't make use of sticky objectives and have more units available to fight. A Clamorous could counter the less cluttered board from fewer enemy units, but unless your opponent has units in reserves, you can often abandon your home objective and leave it under your control because of the neophytes planned generations in the making. The 5 pure strains are there to keep enemy infiltrators away from the center of the board or one flank of your choice, it depends on the terrain. This is the unit to deploy first. Write down the order you deploy units if you need to. The pure strains can complete secondary missions in the first turn. This could be establish locus, deploy teleport homers, new name of card in 2025 to 2026 mission deck. So being in the center is a good idea because you can score points from that mission if you draw it in the first turn. You can also claw into the screen of enemies like scouts or Tau stealth suits. You may not kill them, but if the pure strains are not scoring points, they can be a hassle to enemy units that might otherwise be able to score points in your opponent's turn. Because they can advance and charge, they can reach into enemy units that can be great at killing our neophytes. Units like Hormigants, for example. Claw your way through masses of enemy light infantry. Then they are less of a problem when our real army arrives. I have one Ridge Runner. I told you the Ridge Runner would come back. You can have more if you want, but I want the main profile our enemy has to deal with in this army to be lots of low toughness, low save models. Because if we can get rid of the Sisters of Silence or the Cadian infantry squads, Custodes, Terminators, and Lyran Rust Vanquishers don't have the number of attacks to get through our infantry, and they are reduced to completing missions, something that we can do better and faster than them. My Ridge Runner in this detachment has a mining laser and a spotter, so it will hit on a 3+. Coming from strategic reserves, it will arrive near the edge of the board, and then it gets sustained hits. It will be supporting the neophytes with his twin heavy stubber and fire the mining laser at elite infantry or a medium tank, making use of the ignore cover, as well as the extra shots we may get from sustained hits. It can take out a rhino in one go. Potentially. The 5 Handflamer acolytes fulfill the same role as in the Outlander Claw list, getting rid of enemies, completing actions, and being a nice cheap unit to return through Cult Ambush. I don't have any demolition charges. I know we have tunnel crawlers in this detachment to pop up close to the enemy, but without force multiplying characters with something like Assassination Edict, they don't hit very well, and they cost command points that we want to use elsewhere on that big strike turn. So 4 Handflamers and a cult icon are safer. Then we have enough for one more character. There are a few options. There are 55 points remaining, so I could have a Jackal Alphas. A Jackal Alphas gives your other unit shooting at the same unit as the Jackal Alphas reroll hit rolls of 1. If there are any units to support, because the main Primus unit that's doing the shooting already rerolls all hit rolls. And the Handflamers of the other units automatically hit. The Alphas is able to shoot and then move away, and they can move very quickly to get around the board, much as in the Outlander Claw detachment. But I prefer another sniper, the Sanctus Sniper. They have lone operative, so they don't need to shoot and scoot. They don't get shot outside of 12 inches. Yet Vindicare Assassins are the exception. The Sanctus has a better sniper gun, but don't be tricked into shooting. You never have to shoot. The main job of the Sanctus is to complete missions and also be another person to infiltrate and deny enemy infiltration near that area. I have my Sanctus with the sniper because that version has a free reactive move to stay safe. The enemy may try to chase you around a bit. That is time not spent killing neophytes. But if you have the points, take a Reductus Saboteur. Before 20 neophytes cost 145 points, they cost 130 points. My list included a Reductus Saboteur because I had the points to spend. Depending how the points document is when you are playing with this list, will depend on which supporting character you have. This army is a lot of infantry. It's a lot to paint, but it's a flexible detachment and can operate with combat units and shooting units. Or you can go full horde, which oddly enough doesn't require as many infantry models. Do you like acolytes? Do you think they are the coolest? What about metamorphs? Or do you like being able to advance and charge across the army? The Horde detachment is the Xenocreed Congregation. Glory to the Patriarch, glory to his favored children, glory to all in the Xenocreed Congregation. The Xenocreed detachment has the ability to strike fast and hard and then keep up the pressure. Not strong pressure, but definitely pressure in the later game. It is a tide of bodies with a much greater focus on combat than the Host of Ascension and a greater reliance on characters. The detachment rule is our guide once again for the units to choose. Acolytes of either kind, metamorphs and neophytes can reroll advance and charge rolls if they have a character model in the unit. Any character? It doesn't have to be one of the characters mentioned lower down in the list. It could be a Nexus or a Locust or a Biophagus. Usually those two because they are combat enhancing characters. The neophytes play a lesser role in this detachment because they do not want to charge very often. The lads and lasses with the claws want to charge. Even though we can reroll charges, I don't recommend trying to charge from deep strike. The odds of success are not great. Better to make your way through the terrain and then have a big rush at the end. The second part of the detachment rule gives the Primus, Magos and Icon Ward a 3+ Feel No Pain while in the unit, which makes that model resistant to precision attacks. It is just the model, it is not every model in the unit. To speed up the time it takes for us to charge, we have two ways of advancing and charging with Acolytes or Metamorphs. Pure Strain Genestealers can also advance and charge without needing assistance. Incendiary Inspiration is one of the ways to advance and charge. The other way is Tireless Fervor, advance and charge or fall back and charge. With a character in the unit, you can reroll the advance roll and the charge roll. This detachment has a lot of speed to get to the enemy, but you need to make sure that once you are there, you can cause enough damage to make it worthwhile. As there are two ways of advancing and charging, I am going to take those two as blocks for the army list and build around them. This army list is an Icon Ward with Incendiary Inspiration, leading 10 Metamorphs who have Hand Flamers. There is a Goliath truck for them. We have a Ridge Runner, 5 Pure Strain Genestealers, 10 Neophytes, a Locust with 10 Acolytes with Auto Pistols and Mining Tools, 3 lots of 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers, and another Icon Ward with Deeds that speak to the masses. The Icon Ward with Incendiary Inspiration can have a massive boost of speed and damage output in shooting. The Icon Ward can scout and the Metamorphs can scout, and the truck is a dedicated transport, so it gets to scout 6 inches before the game starts. Then the Metamorphs can get out of the truck. They can move and advance and shoot with the stratagem Transcendent Celerity, and they can reroll their wound rolls against the unit they shoot if it was the same one that the truck shot at. Remember that from the Outlander Claw detachment? And because of Incendiary Inspiration, they can charge after advancing. This can give you a super speedy strike in turn 1. But you do not have to do it turn 1. Wait for the optimum moment. The massed Hand Flamers may be enough. The units we want to destroy may be protected by a screen of other units and not yet viable to be charged. Of course, killing off screens is something we can do with those Hand Flamers. Don't forget the Ridge Runner Crossfire ability if you are facing a really tough or large enemy unit in the way of your target. Most often I find that all of the bonuses are not needed and the target dies without a Ridge Runner's help. With its own scout ability and quick movement, you can get a firing angle on a lot of enemies turn 1. Also remember target priority. Remember what I said at the start of the video about enemies with high objective control. We have a lot of bodies in this detachment, and Acolytes have objective control too, but we need to prevent the enemy from matching us. Unbeknownst to our enemy, the big screen of 20 Kroot or 20 Guardsmen or Gretchen lined up across the deployment zone was our target all along. The monsters and elites of the enemy army can be tied up in the later game with waves of disposable faithful, while our other units hold objectives and complete actions. That's the plan. The detachment runs out of steam quickly, so you have to be clear in your mind which enemy units you want to destroy, and do that as soon as possible. To open that corridor of attack, Pure Strain Genestealers infiltrate, which prevents enemy infiltrators from deploying ahead of them, thus giving the Metamorph truck one avenue of attack. The Pure Strains, as a unit that can advance and charge, could fight off enemy infiltrators or rush into the gap left by whatever the Metamorphs flame to death and either kill another unit or delay an enemy unit that can't easily kill a 2 wound 5+ invulnerable save Pure Strain. That will force the enemy to fall back and not shoot, instead of moving forwards and shooting and charging or completing actions. Without characters, our returning units who arrive through Cult Ambush are not as effective. Genestealers are a good choice for resurgence points because their power is undimmed. They are really fast and advance and charge without stratagem cost. If they died in your own combat phase, they can return quickly through Cult Ambush markers in your opponent's turn and rush back into the fight. We don't want to rush the Metamorphs in gung-ho and screaming. They have a 4+ feel no pain with the Icon Ward, but that doesn't last long against any real attempt to destroy them. The 10 Neophytes stay on the home objective. They sticky it, they can complete actions if you draw them as a secondary mission. Instead of staying on the home objective, after they have stickied the home objective, advance and embark within the Goliath truck before it moves away, and then the truck has more shots from its firing deck. The truck, with the firing deck guns, will shoot at some enemy unit. That will give the Metamorphs full reroll to wound against that enemy unit. The Neophytes then get taken to the next objective. They can complete more primary and secondary missions. If you wanted to swap this unit for 5 Acolytes with auto pistols, you could. If you are moving from Host of Ascension into Xenocreed and learning as you go, a unit of 20 Neophytes with a Primus who has Denunciator of Tyrants can work pretty well. It is similar enough to Assassination Edict in the Host of Ascension to feel familiar. Targeting an enemy character unit is pretty easy. This can be lone operative characters, knights that have a character keyword, and any unit with a character attached as part of an attached unit. All of them are characters, all are tyrants who shall fall. This is not as powerful as the Neophytes and Primus in the Host of Ascension, so I left it out and kept to the combat theme for my list. Part of that combat theme is a Locus with 10 Acolytes. This is 30 points cheaper than Metamorphs, but Metamorphs would also work. Because we can advance and charge with rerolls, we are very mobile to strike where we need to. The Metamorphs deal with units that have 1 or 2 wounds, the Acolytes deal with vehicles and units that have 3 wounds. Their mining tools are AP-2 and damage 3. This is the unit that has command points spent on them. Tireless Fervor to advance and charge, or the Path of Anguish to move into an enemy unit in their shooting phase. Even if we are then charged by another unit, the cheapest character on our roster, the humble but brilliant Locus, lets us fight first. And Frenzied Devotion lets the unit hit on a 2+ with bonus attacks. It doesn't matter about a few losses from Hazardous if the enemy is in tiny pieces all around. Losses can be recouped with the cult icon. The Deeds That Speak enhancement in its current form is 25 points to have another 2 resurgence points. 5 Acolytes worth of resurgence points at a cost of 25 points. The character does not have to be alive when you use those points, the character does not need to be on the table at the start of the game, there are no requirements beyond having the enhancement. At the start of the game, you get 2 more resurgence points. I think that is good value. 8 resurgence points lets us return 4 lots of 5 Acolytes, or both of the big Acolyte and Metamorph units. The drawback is the cost of a Magos, Primus, or Icon Ward character who then needs a place within the army, and they are not able to provide their unit with another enhancement like Denunciator of Tyrants. My Icon Ward with the enhancement can feel a bit lost, but there are places to put them. They could lead the Neophytes. They could lead 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers to give them the detachment rule. I could have made 2 units of 5 Hand Flamer Acolytes into a unit of 10 to be better led by the Icon Ward, but I like 3 small units to complete missions. And the Icon Ward can walk around alone. They can deep strike. They can complete secondary missions. There are not many units to complete all of the missions in a 1000 point game. They can stand on objectives, and if they are killed, your Acolytes, Neophytes, and Metamorph units can reroll all hit rolls against their killer if you use Vengeance for the Martyr. But walking alone and Magos could do better, as they also hinder enemy shooting and don't need line of sight when doing so. What I have sometimes done is put the Icon Ward in the same unit as the Locus. Then those Acolytes gain a 5+ Fear No Pain, identical to the one that the Metamorphs already have. Even if the Acolytes take no damage from enemy attacks, lucky Feel No Pains can save against failed hazardous tests when we are using the Frenzied Devotion stratagem. Fights first discourages enemies from charging the acolytes, so they prefer to shoot them instead. The Icon Ward gives some resistance, but this is a very expensive unit combo at nearly a quarter of our points in one squad, and it can die quickly. The benefit of the character deployment rules are that I don't need to decide where I place the Icon Ward until I know the enemy I'm facing, see their army list, and then decide if I need to counter lots of small arms, need more units to complete missions, and be headshot bait, or I need to make another unit capable of rerolling their charge rolls. Icon Wards can also save cult ambush markers to bring a unit back really close to them, ready to move and charge in our coming turn. The Ridge Runner has a mining laser and a spotter. The spotter will help the mining laser to hit, but it also helps a twin heavy stubber to hit, which can trigger the crossfire rule. You may want to fire the mining laser at a tough enemy, but you want the crossfire rule on a different enemy. So fire the heavy stubbers at that unit, and the mining laser at the big tank or monster. You're more likely to hit with the heavy stubbers, so you're more likely to get the crossfire rule working. If I haven't got the Icon Ward alone, the Ridge Runner and maybe the Truck complete actions and secondary missions, as do the Acolytes with Hand Flamers. They pick off light infantry that could score victory points and hold objectives. At 2 resurgence points per unit of 5, you can have 4 additional units of them in this detachment. Use them to get in the way of enemies, overwatch enemies with their hand flamers, and charge enemies with fewer than 5 attacks. If they can't kill 5 acolytes, they waste their turn getting rid of us only for the unit to return through cult ambush. I have 5 hand flamers in this detachment, no cult icon. If the unit dies, we have the resurgence points to come back. We have another reason to be uncaring with the lives of these acolytes. The longer the mining weapon acolytes and metamorphs live, the longer we have units with characters that can benefit from the detachment rule and the enhancements. The power of the Xenocreed army goes way down if they die, and then you are throwing waves of acolytes at the enemy and scoring victory points where you can. This is why you need to get rid of the units that the enemy was going to use to score victory points as soon as possible. Pick your targets carefully and stick to the plan. It has been generations in the making. Then the small acolyte units can be disposably used to delay and distract the enemy. The Xenocreed Congregation can be a good transition from the models in the Host of Ascension and make use of tactics from both the Host of Ascension and the Outlander Claw. And it has 10 fewer models than the Host of Ascension. Unfortunately, we have to spend so many points on characters to make the detachment work. But then you have really powerful acolytes and metamorphs. Of course, there is another detachment if you want to get even more monstrous. Pure strains and aberrants, as well as the metamorphs and acolytes, can shine in the Biosanctic Broodsurge. The detachment rule of the Biosanctic Broodsurge is Hypermorphic Fury. Add 1 to charge rolls for aberrants, pure strain genestealers, and biophagus units, so that's any unit joined by a biophagus. In addition, if you make a charge move, you add 1 to the attacks of the melee weapons for models in the unit. Because any unit you attach a biophagus to gets the detachment bonus, as long as the biophagus is alive, metamorphs and acolytes will benefit from the same detachment bonuses as aberrants and pure strains. I like the extra attacks. I like that you have liked the video. We don't get advance and charge in this detachment except on the pure strains, but we have more than +1 to the charge with stimulated Biosurge for at least +1 more and additional inches if you charge multiple units. Much like Our Time Is Nigh, you can do this from reserves, but rapid ingress with a unit desperate to make a charge will work better. This detachment doesn't need that much deep strike. What it can do is a lot of infiltrating. Half of the units in the army list I'm about to show off can infiltrate. From the start of the game, we can pin the enemy in their deployment zone with pure strains and another infiltrating unit whose leader has predatory instincts. A biophagus is my preferred choice because they can be attached to a range of units, now with infiltrate. So let's choose the Genestealer Cult unit that is the weakness of our opponent, which is now closer than ever. These units hide out of line of sight in case we don't get the first turn, but then we charge forwards to threaten enemy units, or we have 3 cheers of Vive le Patriarch and charge right away. And the Patriarch is leading us. The list has the Patriarch with a biomorphic adaptation, 10 pure strain genestealers, 5 pure strain genestealers, 2 biophagus, 1 with predatory instincts, 10 acolytes with auto pistols, 5 aberrants, a Reductor Saboteur, an Achilles Ridge Runner, 10 Neophytes, and 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers. The Patriarch is not an epic hero, unlike in the Index, so they can have enhancements. The Biomorph adaptation improves the armor penetration and damage of their weapons by 1. You can assassinate characters with the Patriarch, as you now have reliable damage 3 and AP-4 with the enhancement and a Ridge Runner. If the enemy has an invulnerable save, the Patriarch has devastating wounds and Twin Link to reroll wound rolls that are not a 6. That will also mess up a tank. 10 Pure Strains is my choice of unit to return through Cult Ambush. It costs all of the points, but the unit can return through a Cult Ambush marker and then advance and charge with +1 on the charge to get back into the fight very quickly and do a lot of damage once they get there with their bonus attack. Or they can return in my turn and attempt to roll an 8 on 2d6 to complete a charge, ideally doing this out of line of sight of the enemy. If the game is going in my favour in terms of crushing the enemy within their own deployment zone, 5 Pure Strains and another little unit are my choice instead to score more victory points. You can hold units in Cult Ambush until you need them. In my most recent non-Biosanctic Broodsurge game, I lost a Metamorph unit turn 1 and held it in reserve until there was a secondary mission which required another unit to complete it. The units in reserve are destroyed at the end of battle round 3 does not apply to units you put into any kind of strategic reserves. It only applies to units that start the game in reserves. 5 more Pure Strains can target small enemy units like 10 Cultists or Catachans. They have enough attacks to get through them. Otherwise, they can complete actions from secondary cards if you have any to complete in the first turn. The Reductor Saboteur can also complete missions from the start of the game. They form part of the defense if we go second and enemies rush our infiltrating units. She is infiltrating, and her planted explosives can deter enemies. Another part of the defense is Predatory Instincts on a Biophagus, which also lets the unit heroically intervene for free. So I have 2 Biophagus in this army. One of them has Predatory Instincts. So would our opponent struggle more against Aberrants or Acolytes? That decides which Biophagus go where. The other unit can Deep Strike and Rapid Ingress to get into the fight quickly if we go second, or if we go first, we can have a stimulated Biosurge to be more likely to succeed at the charge. Acolytes and their extra attack and anti-vehicle keyword tools can take out vehicles or lots of infantry alongside the Pure Strains. I didn't pick Metamorphs because they are very similar to Pure Strains in what they can kill. And in this detachment, the Pure Strains have 5 attacks matching the Metamorphs, but at -2 AP. The Aberrants can fight monsters. This is the only detachment where we have something to combat monsters. Gene Twisted Muscle gives a unit +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles. The Patriarch and Pure Strains could use it to claw through a monster, but Aberrants will use it better, as their attacks are damage 2. That is the other profile on the Metamorphs accounted for. 10 Neophytes are used to control the home objective. You could have 5 Acolytes with mining tools instead, but there are few effective stratagems in this detachment, so you don't need to save up the command points. 10 Neophytes gives a larger area denial for enemy deep strike because there are more bodies. If there are no enemies left to arrive from reserve, they move on to the objectives in no man's land, and with the enemy held back, the Neophytes should be uncontested in scoring victory points. The Ridge Runner doesn't have a mining laser this time. It has a mortar. Fast-moving infiltrating units will get out of line of sight of the Ridge Runner very quickly. Because we want to charge with our army in turn 1 and perhaps charge straight into the enemy deployment zone, we don't have a great benefit in putting the Ridge Runner in strategic reserves, which will arrive in battle round 2 at the earliest. Mortars can provide crossfire out of line of sight to make the claws of our Biosanctic units better. A spotter will offset the -1 to hit penalty from firing indirectly. The Ridge Runner could stay back on the home objective and keep firing the mortar. The Neophytes have used a plan generations in the making, so the Ridge Runner can abandon it if there is somewhere better to be. Or the Neophytes can move up and complete actions instead of the Ridge Runner because you can't complete actions and shoot, and we need the Ridge Runner to shoot to provide that crossfire bonus. And finally, we have 5 Handflamer Acolytes. They can deep strike to put more pressure on enemies in support of the Aberrants and Pure Strains, or they make a great counter-attacking unit because they can reroll wound rolls against enemies that seize any of our objectives. You could have a second unit if you wanted to drop the Reductus. The Reductus costs 65 points, we have 5 points spare, 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers cost 70 points. This army list is in the face of your opponent right away. With the speed of the Pure Strains, you can run at your targets you need to kill. And what are they? Enemies that will score victory points. The other good option is enemy units that can kill a lot of Genestealer Cult infantry. It will take some in-game practice to get them set up in the infiltrating positions correctly, because if your opponent goes first, you don't want to be mass charged and suddenly everyone is dead, because we don't have fight first anywhere. Initiative 6 Genestealers is not a rule in this edition of 40k. Figure out how far the enemy can charge, and then make it unlikely that they're going to make those charges if they go first. If you like this tactic of the Patriarch with Pure Strains rushing the enemy straight from the go, and with infiltrating units, you could try a different detachment, the Final Day. Here the Patriarch is not just a leader of the Genestealers, they are the intermediary between the Genestealer Cult and the coming Tyranids. The Patriarch is watching. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel to appease him. The Final Day detachment is one of our Alliance detachments, as you can bring in units from another codex. In this case, these Vanguard Invader units are available to invite round for dinner. Up to 500 points of the army can be made up of these units, and you will want a high percentage of your army to be Tyranids. If not, you should be playing Biosanctic Broodsurge instead. The tactics are very similar. One of the detachment rules lets Tyranid Synapse units eat cultists to regenerate wounds. That is not the interesting ability, as you should think of this detachment as Tyranids supporting Genestealer Cult and not the other way around. Catalyst is the good ability. It takes a second to understand. Rather than read it out, I will explain it. Enemy units within 6 inches of Tyranid units are affected by Catalyst. Genestealer Cult units that attack enemies affected by Catalyst get +1 to hit, shooting, and combat. So the detachment wants us to have Tyranids close to the enemy, and the Genestealer Cult units are causing the damage. The Tyranids are going to be closest to the enemy after charging, so let's charge with them and follow up with Genestealer Cult units. We're gonna have a very active Patriarch. He's not going to be sitting on a chair for this one. The list starts with a Patriarch with Inhuman Integration, understandably as he's not human at all. He leads 10 Pure Strain Genestealers. We have a Biophagus with Enraptured Damnation, leading 10 Metamorphs. There are 10 Neophytes, a Ridge Runner, Death Leaper, a Lictor, 2 squads of 10 Gargoyles, and a squad of 3 Von Ryan's Leapers. I mentioned the Patriarch performing well in this detachment. Inhuman Integration allows weapons in the bearer's unit to have sustained hits 1 while targeting an enemy within 6 inches of 1 or more friendly Tyranid units. Because of that, we want to deploy the Patriarch and his Pure Strains near another infiltrating Tyranid. If the Tyranid unit failed their charge, but the Patriarch made their charge, you can use Psy Surge to extend the range of Catalyst for +1 to hit, which the Genestealers don't need as they hit on 2s, but that won't let Inhuman Integration work, because Inhuman Integration isn't related to Catalyst. It just has the same range. Inhuman Integration is not attacking an enemy affected by Catalyst. It is when you attack an enemy within 6 inches of a Tyranid unit. So you would use a command point to re-roll the Tyranid unit's charge. If you had another command point or all the charges worked, use Hyper Ferocity on the Pure Strain Genestealers with the Patriarch to re-roll all wound rolls. So you're hitting on 2s, with +1 if there are enemies that are -1 to be hit. Then you're re-rolling all wound rolls, and if you need 6s to really hurt the enemy, you have devastating wounds with the Patriarch. You can re-roll to fish for 6s. The Pure Strain Genestealers are the most likely unit to die first, but 10 Pure Strains can return, though it will cost all of our Resurgence points. They can return quickly, as we've established previously. The Ridge Runner has a mortar for the same reason as with the Biosanctic Broodsurge attachment. They support Genestealer Cult units anywhere on the board. If they're attacking an enemy within 6 inches of a Tyranid unit, like Gargoyles, that will mitigate the -1 to hit from indirect fire. But because you can't hit on better than a 4+ when firing indirectly, the spotter is not as needed. you would have Ballistic Skill 3+, then you would have -1 to hit. Even with +1 to hit, you're capped at 4+. The spotter is still useful if you ever shoot at an enemy that is not in catalyst range, but I took a flare launcher for free smokescreen to keep the Ridge Runner alive. A heavy mining laser is an option. The spotter changes the ballistic skill to 3+, and then with +1 to hit from catalyst, now you hit the enemy on a 2+. That is very scary. The Biophagus leads 10 metamorphs, 9 have hand flamers, 1 has a cult icon. If the unit attacks an enemy within range of Catalyst, you will get +1 to hit from that detachment rule, and once per game the Biophagus can give you +1 to wound against enemy infantry. Hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s against most enemy infantry is horrifying. And you can walk out into the open before you charge, because with Enraptured Damnation, the unit is immune to Overwatch. So I would rapid ingress to a point of safety, move out, don't get hit by Overwatch, and then you charge. The Neophytes are here, as usual, to sticky the home objective. It takes time for them to move up the board to get to another objective, so if you have a command point available, at the end of your opponent's turn, use resistance tunnels to move them into reserves. When you need them, they can arrive to complete secondary missions or drop onto an empty objective. The Lictor is here to complete actions. They're a lone operative, so they resist enemy shooting unless it's within 12 inches, and they have fight first to counter enemy charges from small enemy units like, well, anything with a jump pack that's moving 12 inches and is going to charge you. You may kill enough of the enemy to stop them from killing your Lictor, and in the following turn, you fight first again and may be able to wipe out the unit. The Lictor has an ability on their datasheet to rapid ingress for free. This could potentially allow them to walk on from the board edge onto an empty objective, ready to score the primary mission in your coming turn. Or you can use rapid ingress to set them up and then move forward to provide the catalyst aura. Death Leaper is an infiltrator you can be more cavalier with. They do the same things as the Lictor, but if the Death Leaper dies, use Avenge the Star Children. Until the end of the battle, Genestealer Cult models will get +1 to hit and +1 to wound against the enemy unit that destroyed Death Leaper. It's not the best option, but you could rush in and get yourself killed against the worst and most horrifying enemy unit, and now your Genestealer Cult units are more able to take them down. The Von Rhein's Leapers are the unit I pair with the Pure Strains. I deploy them behind a wall or just behind the Pure Strain Genestealers. They can counter any enemies that are charging your Pure Strains in turn 1, because their unit ability allows a free heroic intervention. And there will be no penalties to that heroic intervention because of their fight first ability. They will still fight first, even if they don't get the normal charge bonus, which is to fight first. Gargoyles. They are great for the Catalyst aura of +1 to hit. You get loads of them, they can spread out in a wide area, they can move after shooting, so the Psi Surge stratagem is not as needed. If you deep strike, you can shoot and move closer to provide the aura. Or advance move up the table and shoot with their assault weapons and then move 6 inches more again. They will get into range to provide the Catalyst aura very reliably. You could rapid ingress them so that in the coming turn, you have them where they are needed. Hiding on your side of the board before rushing forward is also a good option. With 18-inch range guns, they are very likely to be able to shoot something somewhere with at least one gargoyle, and you don't need to hit to trigger the Winged Swarm ability. If the gargoyles get tied up in combat, it is not the end of our movement shenanigans. With the darting attack stratagem, you can fall back and still shoot. So fall back 12 inches, then shoot, then you get to move another 6 inches. So you're still going 18 inches and you can get to where you need to provide that catalyst aura, or get into whatever position is needed to score some secondary missions, like control the center of the board. The Pure Strains and the Metamorphs are doing the most killing. If you organize it correctly, the Pure Strains and the Metamorphs can cause a lot of damage to even the toughest enemies. As long as you don't charge into the middle of the enemy army, you can do well. Death Leaper, the Lictor, the Gargoyles, and the Neophytes are completing primary and secondary missions. I used to have a Sanctus in this army list, but I have enough lone operatives in the Lictor and Death Leaper. If you lose all of your Tyranids, your army is far less effective. Resistance tunnels can still be used, but the only other stratagem is hyperferocity, but only rerolling wound rolls of 1. This detachment is about working together, supporting one another and sharing biomass. So please click the share button and share this video with any Genestealer Cult players you know, whether they are getting into Genestealer Cult with the combat patrol, with basic tactics, with lots of their favourite model, assuming they love acolytes or metamorphs or aberrants, or because they're going from one army to another, there will be value for them in this video. The Brood Brothers Auxilia are the other allied detachment that is perfect for people with Imperial Guard armies. The Brood Brothers Auxilia is an easy way to learn the Genestealer Cult, especially if you have Imperial Guard. But you could proxy some neophytes with mining lasers as heavy weapon teams, and a rock grinder with an incinerator as a hellhound, or do it the opposite way around. Have some Cadians proxied as neophytes, have a Chimera proxied as a truck, and so on. It's an easy detachment because you learn the datasheets and unit abilities without caring about the detachment rule or the stratagems, both of which are bad. There is no paralysis when thinking about Cult Ambush Resurgence points, as you can only use them on the Genestealer Cult units, and there are limited choices, which means limited thought. Part of the army is the big guns of the Guard. Aim and fire is about as simple as it can get for the Genestealer Cult. This is another allied detachment, but synergy is optional. You can do as I have done all video, follow the detachment rule and make an army with paired up Genestealer Cult and Guard units. This is the only time I will consider disregarding the detachment rule. I don't mean disregarding the Brood Brothers detachment rule with a limitation on which units you can take. I mean ignoring the integrated tactics. There are a lot of restrictions here. Every time an Astra Militarum unit from your army is selected to shoot, you can select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to that unit. Then the models in your Astra Militarum unit can only target that enemy unit, and then the enemy is caught in overlapping fire. After that, each time a Genestealer Cult model from your army targets that enemy unit, they get +1 to hit. So you need to be visible, you need to fire all of your guns at them, and you need to be within 18 inches. And even then, it only works in the shooting phase, so you won't get any bonus to your close combat specialists. You can forget about it. Maybe it'll happen, but I will consider it a little extra. It is a minor part of our plans. But if I can, I will do it. This is the 1000 point army list. We have a Primus as the Warlord with Firepoint Commander leading 20 neophytes. There are 2 Ridge Runners, 2 squads of 10 neophytes, 5 Handflamer Acolytes, 2 Scout Sentinels, separate units, same as the Ridge Runners, a Leman Russ Battle Tank, and a squad of 10 Kazakin. There's definitely a mix going on. Some of the Genestealer Cult units are fighting, some are completing missions. Some of the Brood Brothers are fighting, some are completing missions. The 20 neophytes are with the Primus, and as if back from Cult Ambush, we see a combo from the Host of Ascension. Sort of. You can have +1 to hit from the detachment rule if you shoot a Brood Brothers unit first. You get rerolls to hit from the Primus. You can use the Symbiotic Destruction stratagem to reroll wound rolls of 1 for not just the Brood Brothers unit, but all of the neophytes. You can have AP -1 and ignore cover from a Ridge Runner using the Crossfire ability and the Survey Auger. That's not bad. That's gonna do some damage. But there's much more we do. Firepoint Commander allows the unit to fire Overwatch and hit on a 5+. This is very good when the Primus gives you full rerolls to hit. It's almost as good as their regular shooting, but you won't have any of the combos. The other main thing the Primus does is their other ability. They can move units into reserves. So I set up the Ridge Runner with the Survey Auger and the 20 neophytes on the table. This will let you see more of the enemy's deployment drops. It helps you plan where you're going to place your Leman Russ. It also allows you to spend your strategic reserves points allocation on Brood Brothers units, knowing the Genestealer Cult units you want in reserves can still be moved there before the game starts. I had the 10 Kazakin in reserves, and 10 neophytes and 5 acolytes starting there. Then I moved 20 neophytes and a Ridge Runner into reserves. The last of the 3 redeployments from the Primus could be to move the last Ridge Runner around the deployment zone. So there are 2 Ridge Runners. Like in Final Day, they can hit on a 2+, with the detachment rule support giving +1 to hit, and a spotter giving a 3+ ballistic skill. So one of them has a mining laser and a spotter. That is the Ridge Runner that starts on the board. The Ridge Runner with the mining laser and the survey auger is moved into reserves. So when they pop out near the neophytes can have ignore cover, almost like in Host of Ascension. The mining lasers are there to fight heavy infantry or enemy vehicles. We save killing lots of infantry for the 20 neophytes. 10 of the neophytes are on the home objective to sticky it from the start. 5 Handflamer Acolytes for, well, you'll never guess, it's the same thing they've been doing the whole time. Deep striking and completing missions and using their Handflamers to shoot low toughness, low armor save infantry. Exactly the same as in all the other army lists. The other squad of 10 neophytes can drop in from reserves to complete missions or do a little bit of shooting. At time of recording, 5 Acolytes with mining tools cost the same as 10 neophytes. I find it much harder for enemies to fight their way through 10 neophytes than 5 Acolytes. I also find there is often space on the board at 1000 points to fit 10 neophytes, but if you want 5 Acolytes with mining tools instead, go for it. The 2 Scout Sentinels have a lot of jobs. They can support the neophytes and the Ridge Runner using the detachment rule. They have the speed to get the firing angles. Keep the Sentinels safe until the Genestealer Cult units strike. The shooting order is Symbiotic Destruction on the Sentinel and Neophytes. Then the Sentinel fires. Then the Ridge Runner fires. Then the Neophytes fire. Write that down if you need to. Because the Sentinel is providing +1 to hit from the detachment bonus for the Ridge Runner coming from reserves, so the Ridge Runner is getting +1 to hit, and then the Neophytes will benefit from +1 to hit from the Sentinel, an extra point of armor penetration from the Ridge Runner's crossfire rule, and ignore cover from the Survey Auger. And they already have full rerolls to hit from the Primus. I think Symbiotic Destruction is needed because this is not anywhere near as strong as the Host of Ascension's 20 Neophytes with sustained hits and lethal hits. You will have to judge the board situation for yourself and then decide which bonuses are needed. If you had a few more points available, you could swap the Scout Sentinels for Armored Sentinels, Catachan Heavy Weapons teams with 3 las cannons, or a Krieg Imperial Guard squad with a melter gun and a plasma gun. 10 points more at time of recording. I equipped one Sentinel with a las cannon and the other with a plasma cannon. With a 3+ save and 7 wounds, they're annoying to take down in 1000-point games, more so than a squad of guardsmen or heavy weapon teams at a similar cost. They can move 10 inches, which is enough speed to get onto objectives far from your deployment zone, and they complete secondary missions. If you had an Armored Sentinel and you found that the Armored Sentinel's 8-inch move is not enough, as new deployment maps and objective placements are released, have a Scout Sentinel with Scout 9. This is a better choice in Crusade games as some objectives can be scored in the first turn. And with one Ridge Runner on the board alongside the 2 Sentinels, all 3 central objectives can be reached by scouting units in the first turn. The Sentinel's ability is Daring Recon. That can support the Kazakin to reroll hit rolls of 1. The Leman Russ doesn't need it because they already reroll hit rolls of 1. The Sentinel could use Daring Recon and complete actions. Unit abilities are still allowed while completing actions. Or it could use Daring Recon and shoot a different unit to help Genestealer Cult units. Thankfully, one of the many restrictions of this detachment rule is not needing to hit, so a single las cannon shot that misses, it will still trigger the detachment rule because at least you're fired. Sentinels are a big part of this list. Another place to use Symbiotic Destruction is not for the benefit of the Genestealer Cult unit, but for the benefit of the Leman Russ. Use it on the Leman Russ and any Genestealer Cult units shooting. The Leman Russ has full rerolls to hit against enemies on objectives, and now has reroll wound rolls of 1. With its high strength weapons, you're often wounding on 2s and 3s. So rerolling 1s is going to massively up your damage output. The unit ability to reroll hit rolls and Symbiotic Destruction to reroll wound rolls of 1 works on all of the guns. The multi-melters, the las cannon, the battle cannon, the heavy stubber, the hunter-killer missile. Because of this number of guns, and the full rerolls to hit, the Leman Russ is a good target for Overwatch. You can cause a lot of damage. If you had a choice of which unit fires Overwatch, the Primus with their 20 Neophytes and Firepoint Commander to hit on 5s, or the Leman Russ with their big gun and rerolling all hit rolls, pick the Leman Russ. The last damage dealing unit are the Kazakin. If they die, we have a stratagem Regimental Reinforcements. It's optional, You have to use it when the unit is destroyed, so you need command points available, and then it only works on a 3+. But you could have the Kazakin back. Then they arrive from a cult ambush marker. Any cult ambush marker, not just the cult ambush marker put down when they were destroyed. The Kazakin's unit ability allows them to order themselves, and we know from the FAQ this still works in the Brood Brothers detachment. Usually you order them to have +1 to hit. So with Daring Recon from a Scout Sentinel, the Kazakin are hitting on 2s and re-rolling 1s. To keep them safe, I have them come on from Strategic Reserve and kill something that's bothering you with the Kazakin's 2 melter guns, 2 plasma guns, a plasma pistol, a damage 3 sniper rifle, and 4 hotshot las guns. Target priority is a little bit different in this detachment. We want to get rid of units that have high objective control. We also want to destroy enemies that can take out your Leman Russ, your Ridge Runners, and your Sentinels. We're not so bothered about units that can kill infantry because we can bring back 2 small infantry units and potentially the Kazakin. That's with our resurgence points and our regimental reinforcement stratagem. Want to keep the Leman Russ alive because the Leman Russ battle cannon can turn the tide of the game. It's high enough strength and high enough damage to upset enemy vehicles, and you get a lot of shots with blast so it can mess up heavy infantry. The recommended tip amount for this video is £6 in the Ko-fi tip jar for the 6 army lists and tactics. The playtesting of this video took a long time, and playtesting doesn't earn money for me, and it's time I'm spending doing that, not making more videos that gets ad revenue. I know, woe is me, I have to spend a lot of time playing Warhammer, but any contributions to the digital tip jar are appreciated if this video has been useful to you. So we know. The detachment informs the army list, and you choose detachment based on the tactics you want. Do you want synergy between units in your army? Choose Final Day or Brood Brothers Auxilia. Do you want to rush at the enemy and engage in close combat right away? Pick the Final Day, Biosanctic Broodsurge, or Xenocreed. If you want to control the middle of the board from the start, Final Day has infiltrators, Biosanctic Broodsurge has infiltrators, or Outlander Claw has a lot of scouts. If you want to win based on having lots of objective control, Xenocreed Congregation or Outlander Claw. And if you want carefully directed firepower to win the day, the Host of Ascension or the Brood Brothers Auxilia. Feel free to modify any of these lists to better suit your collection, or if you have a clever tactic in mind with a few units changed, go for it! Now we are done, I want to play all of these lists again. They are so much fun, and that is the main thing. You could even watch this video again. Or watch a different video. This is a playlist with detailed information for each detachment. Watch them all, or watch the video on the detachment most relevant to you. Each of them has a tier list of units to help you make your own army list, and more 1000 point lists included. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.